And welcome to K-Tel's 10 Great Protest Hits. Who can forget songs like Here We Are in Ontario, we got a government that just don't care. They blame the teachers for everything, and we know that's just not fair. Public education, to protect it, that's our fight. And our support is growing because the people know we're right. Put the load on teachers, make them work for free. Put the load on teachers, and call it Bill 116. Or who could forget this timeless hit? I was doing some marking late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. On the TV, the minister with his eyes agleam, bragging about what he was planning for me. He planned the mash, he planned the teacher bash, the teacher bash. It was a short-term smash, he did the bash. It caught on like a flash, he did the bash. He did the teacher bash. But let's forget about Harris for a while. Think about Doug Ford. Don't know much about history, has a very short memory. He wants the bigger sizes, yes, it's true. But parents and teachers know what that will do, and ask the students because they know too. What a wrong-headed thing for them to do. What a wonderful world it won't be. Or how about this timeless hit? You who teach a full load don't have to be told what your numbers grow by. And so think to yourself, you have the proof not to trust that guy. Don't you ever ask him why? All he seems to do is lie. You just look at him and sigh. Well, Doug, it's a bungle, a mighty bungle. The liar sleeps tonight. It's a bungle, a mighty bungle, and the liar sleeps tonight. But we won't go away, everybody. We won't go away, no way.
Brings back a few memories, eh? The camaraderie, the commitment, the outrage, the belief in collective action, and the willingness to fight for our rights. We don't go looking for these fights, but we sure don't back down when they come our way. From strikes by locals to the battle for our pensions, from the social contract to the political protest, from days of action to rallies for social justice, teachers have never been silent. With the formation of OTF in the 40s, teachers gained a collective professional voice. Although salary scales and local agreements were reached, teachers still did not have a legislated framework for bargaining. Their only option to signal their opposition in bargaining was the use of mass resignations. Then, in 1972, came the Reville Committee report, which recommended teachers not be allowed to strike, submit to compulsory arbitration, and have no right to negotiate working conditions. Those were fighting words. And over the next 3 years, there were mass resignations, and on December 8, 1973, a province-wide walkout finally got the government to drop the idea. Teachers won the right to strike, bargain in good faith, and no restrictions on the bargaining agenda with the passing of Bill 100, which became law in 1975. More infringements on collective bargaining came from an unlikely source. Teachers were hopeful with the election of the Rae NDP government in 1990. The social contract in 1993 brought a pay freeze, a grid freeze for newer teachers' salaries, the downsizing of staff, and who can forget Rae Days. While it was bad news for teacher collective bargaining, the Rae government did sign into law the pension partnership we enjoy today. We expected the worst when Harris came to power, and it's fair to say he exceeded our expectations. This time, the future of publicly funded education was at stake. Harris's legacy includes school board amalgamation and loss of local taxation powers. The Tories pushed their agenda for standardized testing, set up the College of Teachers, and tried to institute mandatory recertification for teachers. They even started a tax credit for parents who sent their children to private schools. 11 days of action between 1995 and 1998 took place across Ontario as the Labour movement, along with teachers, coalesced in opposition to the Harris cuts. Bill 160 represented the worst of the Harris agenda. It was a power grab to further centralize, cut funding, repeal Bill 100, and limit the scope of bargaining. Teachers had had enough. On October 27, 1997, all public schools closed across Ontario, as more than 125,000 teachers took part in the largest protest in Canadian education history. Teachers were joined by many allies, parent groups, and the broader Labour movement among them. While we couldn't stop Bill 160 and lost our principal and vice principal members in the process, many of the most draconian measures that were contemplated in the original bill were ultimately withdrawn, and our resistance may have stopped the Harris government from other assaults on public education and public services in general. With the election of the education premier in 2003, things were looking up. The private school tax credit was scrapped, recertification disappeared, and over the next decade or so, new programs and funding were introduced, including full-day junior kindergarten. OTF and the affiliates were consulted and often even listened to. Teachers saw unprecedented opportunities for voluntary professional learning, but these years were not without challenges. Teachers wrestled with initiative overload and ever-increasing expectations, and affiliates wrestled with a new, formalized provincial bargaining regime. Throughout all of these struggles, teachers recognized the value of Labour allies and, in turn, Labour recognized the force of teachers. There were many more times when teachers had to fight for their rights, and there will be more in the future. Win or lose, we know that power lies in solidarity and determined collective action.